One of the things that has driven Internet's evolution is this notion of freedom, freedom of expression, freedom of access to information, freedom to assemble, things that you often associate with the American Declaration of Independence. There's something missing, though, from the list, and I draw it from some of the commentary, and that's freedom from harm. And it seems to me that as technologists and researchers, one of the things that we should be obligated to consider is how to keep people from being harmed from our technology. And so I draw that from several of the rather dark presentations that you just heard. I'm an optimist. I believe that we can actually overcome many of these potential hazards in order to make this technology useful for all of us. But that does mean we have to take an action to do that, as opposed to sitting quietly and hoping somebody else solves the problem.
Well, I thought I was actually talking about avoiding human harm.
Yeah.
And like you, believe it or not, from a dark presentation, I'm actually an optimist as well. I think we can do something.
Well, I'm glad you told me that, because I could have come away with a very different impression.
Well, I was still had to do the 5 minutes, you know, God's sake.
Jim?
So I'm one of Noel's biggest fans and a signer of several of his petitions and things like that. But I do think it's very important we keep in mind that the ethics go both ways. And another colleague of mine, who I'm also very fond of, Robin Murphy, does rescue robotics. And she says, is it ethical to send people into harmful situations where we do have a robotic technology that could help? She was talking about pulling people out of floodwaters. She was talking about earthquakes and things like that. The other day we were talking about Aleppo, right? One of the reasons we can't get the supplies into Aleppo is because of the humans who are driving the trucks. And we have trucks now that don't need humans to drive them. So I think looking at this in a larger ethical framework, as Noel suggested, and thinking about the checks and balances that we need to be able to use them for good, but at the same time prevent some of the overuses for evil, is a very complex but very necessary conversation. And I say to my students all the time, and to those of you who are the young scientists, your generation is living through this. You're living through the job loss. You're living through the change of balance between what humans and machines do. And it's really important that you think about these issues, not just the technologies.
Let me ask one question, since we have people here from Facebook and Google. If you look at the field of AI, right now all the talent is bought up by the big companies in Silicon Valley, right? We don't even have someone here from Apple, because Apple people don't even publish. Right? They sit in their vaults and work on new technologies. Is that a bad development, or is it, could you see that like these companies are fostering the research? Can Google and Facebook scientists publish freely? Is the future of AI corporate? Or
well, first of all, the answer is yes. I mean, look, we turn TensorFlow loose. We build special purpose hardware. We make it available through APIs. TensorFlow is available for people to try out AI algorithms as they wish. Every time you do a Google search, you're experiencing AI when you do translation from one language to another. These are tools, and we are trying, at Google anyway, to make those tools accessible to other people whose ideas should be expressed and exercised by means of those mechanisms. So the answer is we're very open about our AI technology.
I forgot that you were Google, by the way, when you were being so optimistic about the internet. I would not expect someone from Google to say the internet's a really bad thing.
Well, you can even discount the fact that, yes, that's fair. But especially me, right? It had nothing to do with Google. You know, internet came well before that. So anyway, all right. I'm clearly biased anyway.
So it's the same for Facebook research. So I was university professor before for 15 years or something like this. Basically, I'm doing the same job now. And Facebook research from the very beginning was very open. We publish a lot of papers, we open source a lot of our stuff, we share data, and even a couple of years ago, Facebook shared the design of the computer equipment, how it can be used by university. And we have a lot of cooperation.
The new data laws in the European Union, they still have this idea, I have to know where my data are, of course, because it's my data. But there is the new paragraph that says if a machine makes a decision about me, or it's assisted by a machine, they even forbid to make exclusive machine-driven decisions about important things in my life. I have a right to know the logic of the algorithm. But now we've heard about deep learning that even the developers of the programs don't even know the internal logic of the programs. So can we fulfill that in the future? Can I, if I apply for a job and I get turned down because an AI algorithm found me not worthy for that position, can I go and ask, how did you come to that conclusion?
No. Would you like me to explain? The problem with exposing some algorithms is that it leads to an incredible amount of gaming going on. So I'll give you.
I'm not talking about the source code, right? But the principles underlying it. I don't want Google source code for your search.
Thank you.
algorithms.
I'm glad that you don't.
Yeah,
We'd like to keep that protected.
But if someone says Google, has.
Well, let's talk about deep learning. I mean, there's no access, there's no transparency in what's going on in there.
Well, but we don't
you
even
can
know
only
what's
test
going
it.
on. I mean, the people who are designing the things are not necessarily
Exactly.
clear about what's going
Exactly.
on either. I mean, it's a very complex algorithm.
Yeah. Yes, it is. It's
Yeah.
completely.
So even if we
Opaque,
told
really.
you, it wouldn't make any sense. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think we do have a responsibility for the outcomes, right? And scientists have recently discovered that these algorithms that we always thought were objective and unbiased, that they actually had a bias against women and against people of color and these kind of things. So we'll need to get towards the possibility of assessing qualities of algorithms and the outcomes. And we would probably use AI systems actually to do that analysis for us. So, we could still understand a little bit of what's going on. Just talking about all those terms of use, for example, nobody can read all this. So I'd like to have an AI system telling me, but there's something in there you wouldn't agree with because I know you well enough. And so we'll need to have AI systems that think and act on behalf of the customers, and this open AI initiative, it's aiming at democratizing AI and making sure it's acting on our behalf, is heading into this direction, I believe. So we need to think into this direction a lot.
I don't know which study you refer to, but our algorithms are not biased. So data that we feed into it may be biased. So if you choose the wrong data, it will learn the wrong stuff.
Well, but that's exactly the problem, is that we need people to understand that.
Yeah,
Because, for example, in the US right now, judges use a piece of software which tells them the risk that somebody will be a repeat offender and use that in sentencing. That has been analyzed, and it shows that that is racist and sexist and discriminates against poor people because you can do the social science around it. Now, the question is, what data was it fed on? It was fed on data that was who was coming back based on old data that was collected in a very biased way. People say the algorithm is fair, but the system that uses that algorithm has to take that into account. So it's more than just saying data's fine or data's bad.
You really can't get out of responsibility that easily by saying our algorithms aren't biased, because once you've trained them, the representations that you've got in your algorithm, so the weights, the numerical values, are the bias. Right. That's part of your algorithm, surely.
So
you can't.
This is an unsolvable problem. Even human beings make decisions that they're not willing to explain why, like the don't fly list. You ask them, why did I get my name is on that list? They will refuse to tell you. So but for someone to say, only the machines should be able to explain, not human beings, is stupid. We all make decisions. We all make things that we don't want to tell anybody else, for whatever reason it might be, whether it's man or machine. And society has to make up laws that are enforceable. If you make a law that is not enforceable, it'll just be on
Okay,
the
we'll
books.
see how the Europeans want to enforce their new privacy laws. Now we go to the audience.
Okay, I really agree that the weights become biased, and so we can't just say it's somebody else's problem. But in fact, there are some technical solutions. For example, word vectors, which are used in every search engine and in many other things. This word is associated with that word, and those are trained using deep learning, actually. So the point is that these word vectors, you can tell that they are biased. If you put down words like computer scientist and stuff, you will see that those are much more gender biased towards males than towards females. But some of the researchers in my lab went and looked at the gender bias of the underlying word vector maps, debiased them, and fed them back into these things. Now they're trying to do it with ethnic bias, which is more difficult and more subtle, but there are technical solutions, and so we who do the technical work cannot say it's not our problem. It is our problem, and if we're smart enough, we can start to solve that problem.
So Jennifer, it seems to me, though, that what you just said, which I agree with, isn't the solution to the issue is not exposing all the algorithms, it's figuring out how to get them to be unbiased. And so your request that the algorithms be displayed may not solve the problem at all. Open source doesn't solve the problem.
You can probe algorithms without knowing their source code, right?
But you don't even necessarily know what the bias is. It's very easy when you're talking about male, female, and ethnic, but it might be people with the little hair sticking out of the top of their nose. I mean, you don't know what these algorithms are picking out. Yeah, oh God,
one more question over there.
You asked the question about the new EU law. There is a slight correction. The new EU law does not ask to expose your algorithm. What the new EU law would ask in a couple of years of time is to explain your decision, how you would make. And this is really, it's a subtle, but it's a really fundamental difference. So you could explain your decision without exposing your algorithm or source code. Yeah, that's maybe I will tell you something.
I can tell you, the inferential problem is real, right? If you get enough explanation, you'll be able to infer what the algorithm is.
30 years ago, when loan decisions started being made by neural networks, we did face this because US law says there must be an explanation. What they did is they started saying, okay, take that application, change things in it, and say if this was high or until it found one that would work. Now, was that the right explanation, things like that? But again, people were exploring that issue and then it sort of went away. I think we need to look at what is an explanation that makes sense. It's not going to be what the weights are. It's going to have to be.
What he said really protects us because we don't care whether you've got complex algorithms in your systems or not. What the law is saying, it's your responsibility to explain it, and if your algorithms aren't good enough, you should stop using them. I mean, that's what the law will say. Okay. So it's your problem.
From the focus of our discussion, one last question over here, I think then we have to come to an end.
Yeah, seems like the ultimate fears and concern of artificial intelligence is that what if one day human beings has not been at the top of the ecosystem or the pyramid of the world. But, I mean, for example, other creatures like cats and dogs, they are not at the top of the pyramid as well. So I'm curious about how all the panelists look at this question. What if one day we're not at the top anymore?
Okay, that's the big question that we avoided all night is, will machines be smarter than us someday, and how are we going to handle this? I don't think everybody will be able to answer that, but...
Well, one point, who is the we then? Before everybody is no longer on the top of us, there might be a divide. Some of us will stay on the top, and perhaps more people will relegate it. And we have to look at this intermediate state in the first place, I think.
Maybe chimpanzees should say, why are we not at the top? Why are these Homo sapiens at the top? When the next evolution happens, it may be 1 million years from now, we won't be in the top. I guarantee you.
I like the guarantee. We have no evidence. We haven't got a We haven't got a toehold in consciousness. We don't have a toehold in sentience. These are mysteries, and they're mysteries that can easily be exploited, especially by watching lots of science fiction movies, as I do myself. But we have these science fiction tropes. Unfortunately, it even infects the people working in the field. And maybe, I don't know, I'm a scientist, and I could easily be, I could easily get evidence and say, yes, machines are going to be much smarter than us, etc. But where's any evidence for it? Where's this big development? We're good at AlphaGo, we're good at chess with machines, and we could do Jeopardy. Where's the rest of this intelligence that they're going to take over the world? And I keep hearing it all the time. And it's not something I lose sleep over, I can tell you.
There was a report from Stanford coming out like a couple of weeks ago that said there's no sign of any autonomous, generally intelligent machine developing anytime soon. So maybe we'll tackle that problem when it comes up.
So perhaps the way I like to think of this is, I have a slide I didn't show today, but in 1990, I collected a set of quotes about how AI was impossible and therefore we should stop doing it. In 2010, I collected a set of quotes that said, AI is possible, and that's why we should stop doing it. So I think there's a certain bias sometimes to this conversation. I don't think this notion of on top is something we're going to have to worry about anytime soon. I think the much bigger issue, and this has been evaluated, has been shown to be true, is that in many, many situations now, a human and a computer working together will outperform either of them alone. And I think that's really the world we're moving into the next couple generations. And that's the one which we really need to pay attention to in this entire situation of ethics and technology.
Exactly, ceding control to stupid AI.
Yes, this is exactly our problem, is giving too much autonomy to artificial idiots.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that's a note we can end on.
Quote. Somebody write that, tweet that.
Artificial stupidity. Okay, that's a note we can end on. Thank you very much for holding out for so long.